Okay, so here we are. Welcome to the first pod, Balance and Body Diagnostics. I'd say this has been a long time coming, but not really, because you and I kind of just met a few months ago, didn't we?
Yes, we just met a few months ago, and we have, in that short few months, we have started a business, opened our
Yep.
business together. We're in the works of so many exciting things. So it's been a long time coming, but not really.
It has been. It has been. So, a little bit of a backstory. I'm Simone. This is Angelica. We have decades between us. She's in her early 20s. I'm in my mid approaching late 40s, but we love all the same things. Both of us are holistic nutritionists, functional health practitioners, actually trained under the same mentorship and tutelage, and both hyper passionate about bodybuilding. Angelica is kind of reattempting your prep, right? Your first
Yeah,
prep
reattempting.
foray to the stage, which I'm sure you're going to share about with us. And I am thought it was a retired IFBB bikini pro, but apparently Fit Model is calling my name and I will be coming back in 2026. And so, yes, we launched a business together because we've got these mutual passions and it just seemed so perfectly aligned for us to be doing this work together because as we have discovered, and I'm sure all of you will agree, this work is relevant to all of us in the health and fitness space, especially as women, irrespective of age. Angelica and I have the same concerns and priorities when it comes to our health with respect to prep. So, yeah, this makes perfect sense. And yeah, we're just really, really excited to introduce you guys to everything it is that we do as functional health practitioners in bodybuilding and really excited to get to know my business bestie a little bit better since this relationship is still so new. So fresh,
Yes,
right?
it is very fresh still.
It is very, very fresh.
Yeah, so one of the things that actually got me kind of thinking about, originally I was thinking about starting a business like this on my own, and it wasn't until I was actually traveling to Simone's hometown, and she reached out, and we kind of just met, and we got talking about all things functional health and bodybuilding, and that is when the idea of our business
Yeah.
actually really started, and we started laying that groundwork for our business, even though we just met.
It just
But yeah,
felt
so
right. It just felt so right.
it did. We just
Yeah.
really clicked. And we were both so passionate about the subject that I think we like I said, we just really clicked. Um, but yeah, so originally I was thinking about doing something like this on my own, and the reason was I did my first prep last year, last summer actually, and what happened to me was my prep was going well. About halfway through, my body stopped responding, the scale stopped dropping. I was doing all the things. I was doing my workouts, I was doing all my cardio, I was hitting all my macros, I was doing all the things. But my body wasn't responding. And it was an extremely disappointing and frustrating time because, when you're putting in all that work, you want to see the results that you should
Yeah.
be getting. So unfortunately, 2 weeks out from my prep, I had to drop out just because I wasn't going to be ready. Physically, mentally, I wasn't ready. So later down the road, I was doing blood work and I was surprised because my estrogen came back as super, super low. And this was one of the key points that really stuck out to me throughout my blood work was my hormones. And so later on, I was doing the protocols to increase my estrogen, and nothing was really changing until I ran a Dutch test. And so a Dutch test is just a really comprehensive, in-depth test of your hormones. It shows you what your hormones are doing, how they're metabolizing, along with lots of other great markers. But what I learned on that test was that my estrogen was actually really high. And so the entire time I was treating for low estrogen, I was actually making it worse because I was increasing my estrogen. And so that was so mind-blowing to me to realize that my estrogen was actually high. And another thing that went with that was when the Dutch test is a functional test. And when I did my blood work, I just did that with my doctor. And so that was another big eye opener to me to see the difference between conventional testing and functional testing. Um, and so that is why I'm so passionate now about helping others go through the same things that I had. Because as I said, if you have those underlying imbalances, sometimes no matter what you do or habits you have, your body just will not respond. And so that is why we are here to help bodybuilders who have the same issues.
Exactly. And so we're not here to replace coaches. We're actually here to work alongside coaches. I want to make that super, super clear.
Yeah.
We're not building out a team. We actually just want to get onto your existing team and give you the tools that we now have that are going to ensure that we're able to get back on stage at our best possible health and with the greatest capacity to stay in prep for as long as we want to and have the kind of success that is predictable given all of the work that is going to go into your prep, my prep, her prep, our prep. And for me personally, that's going to look like actually our transform program. So I'm going to be running a couple of things going into actually not 2026. I'm not waiting until then. Now at the onset of my prep is when I'm going to be running these labs because I want to number one, be able to determine what is my capacity for prep? Do I actually have the reserve and the resilience to be able to contend with all of the rigors and all the challenges that do come with prep? And let's be real, it's a depleting process. And I want to make sure that the protocol that I pursue, and specifically when it comes to supplementation, that it is actually appropriate for my unique needs. Because we obviously we're all kind of supplement junkies in the space, and you can definitely start taking something because it works for your friend who is also competing or your favorite fitness influencer, and it may work for you, it might not work for you, or as you just shared, it might actually make things worse. So I'm going to be looking at the whole system, top to tail, looking at my metabolic health, my sex hormones, my cortisol capacity, my liver health, my GI map. Those are things that I have actually struggled with in the past. Not too long ago, about 2 years ago, my health completely collapsed, and it was actually not because I wasn't taking care of things from like a nutritional perspective, but I was actually ignoring all of the other things that amount to total stress load, like my workload, like certain relationships that I had, things like my sleep just weren't where they needed to be. I wasn't saying no, I was saying yes to way too many things. And very, very quickly, actually, over the course of about 7 weeks, I put on about 20 pounds. And having been, in the nutrition space for almost a quarter decade now, I would have liked to have thought that I knew what I was doing, and it just seemed like no matter what I tried, no matter what protocol I introduced that had worked in the past, it wasn't working anymore. And we often find that in prep too, right? Like the things that are working at the beginning just not only don't seem to work as we approach show day, but sometimes seem to be leading our body in reverse. So that's it for me. I'm just going to be running all of these things now and ensuring that I'm able to approach my prep in the healthiest possible way. And that's what we do with our clients too, right? Because we want them in the industry, making a name for themselves. We want them in it for as long as they want to be in it and leaving on their own terms and not having things like symptoms squeeze them out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I also, as well, will be running those labs before my next prep. Now, I'm not sure when that will be, maybe 2026.
But you have a
To
lot.
be,
You've got a lot on your plate right now. You've got a lot of other exciting things
yeah,
to be preparing
I
for,
do.
right?
Yes, but
Angelica's getting married.
yep, I'm getting married next summer, which it's insane how much wedding planning goes into that. You really don't think it until you're kind of like immersed into that whole world. It is just so much like is involved, and you really don't think about that. At least I didn't.
I've done it
Um,
twice. I've done it twice, so I can confirm for you. It's a lot.
yeah. Well, it's nice because at least I have your advice, and it's honestly been really, really helpful.
You already did it right. You picked the right guy. That's it. That's all you need to be concerned with. Everything else is going to fall into place. You got the guy, you got the dress, you're good.
That's all I need to worry about.
That's all you need to worry about. Listen, I'll tell you, honestly, that was the one thing that was the promise that I made to myself for my second wedding was that I was going to show up as a guest to my own wedding. I think so many brides, I'm going to say first time brides, like as if it's so normal to have multiple weddings, but brides in general, and I guess grooms too, I feel like when they are at their reception, they are so concerned with the experience of all of their guests that they're in like host mode. And they actually don't get to just sit back and enjoy the fact that this is literally day one of forever. So if I could give you any advice at all, you're the girl in, I don't know if it's going to be a big white dress or like a fitted white dress, but you're the girl in the white dress. Everyone is going to know who they are. If they want to come and talk to you, they know where to find you. Sit back and enjoy. Be a guest at your own wedding. And I'll be there. So I'll make sure. I'll make sure.
No,
That's
that
gonna
is
be my
definitely
job.
something.
I've self-appointed myself. That's gonna be my job.
That works good for me. That actually is something I've really seen through like planning my own wedding and also like my sister's wedding is that it's really easy for the wedding to become about everybody else
Yeah.
and not you. And so that is definitely that's something I really, really want to prioritize and focus on is that day is just about us and I just don't want to stress about it. So yeah, it is very, very helpful to have your advice. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, you're welcome. But isn't that so, I mean, isn't that so functional, right? Like when I think about prep and where I want to see our athletes, if I want to put them into the perfect position to be able to have an incredible prep, a really successful prep, it really comes down to managing the stressors, right? And so in our space, we talk about a lot of hidden stressors, so things that are happening under the hood, whether that be, infection, inflammation, whether that be sort of digestive disruption, cortisol dysregulation. There's all sorts of things that can impede an athlete and a coach who's written a phenomenal protocol from being able to see the results that they predict. But there's all of this superfluous stuff, all of the perceived stressors, right? Because for our metabolism, for our hormonal health, whether it is an actual true lived stress, so something acute like, oh, I've injured myself, right? I didn't sleep last night, or I'm not happy in my relationship, or I've got all of these people in my life who are naysayers and not supportive, or I'm doom scrolling accounts that don't make me feel good about myself. All of that is part of your total stress load. And so in the same way that I'm telling you, like, take all of that responsibility of hosting off of your plate on your wedding day so you can fully like just drop into the experience and have it be amazing. I want that for our athletes too. And so that's definitely something that, we do with them is we do a full audit of everything that's going on, all of the different moving pieces. And we really just want to make sure that every aspect of your life is perfectly aligned for success, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think stress is most often known as more so mental stress, but and like you said, there are so many different types of stress, whether it be physical, other things going on in your life, relationships, sleep, food, digestion, anything like that. That is also stress to your body. And really, your body doesn't know the difference between stress. So let's say if you're eating a food that doesn't agree with you and your digestion is off, that is still stress to your body. And so when we are really stressed in all aspects like that, it's basically like spinning your wheels in mud. You're trying really, really hard to get out of this, but you're not really going anywhere. And that's really how we approach working with athletes. Like we want to eliminate all of these stressors so that when you're spinning your wheels, you're hitting the ground running, kind of thing.
So what would you say is the number one sort of, I don't want to call coaches out, but I'm going to call them out a little bit. I think everybody in the space is a little bit more mindful of the fact that, we're not machines, we're real human beings, and our bodies have a threshold, right? Like we only have a certain amount of reserve to contend with the stresses of prep. And I think that, it's why we're seeing supplementation as much of a feature of prep as it is today, which is a pretty significant feature. What would you say is the number one supplement that coaches are recommending to their clients with functional health in mind that is actually doing them the greatest disservice?
The first thing that comes to my mind is probiotics. Now, we have this chat all the time,
Yeah, we
all the
do.
time. And
We have
so,
this rant all the time.
yes. And so, on every single coach's protocol, there are probiotics. And so, probiotics, they're a great supplement, but if we don't really know what strains we need or what strains we have too much of, usually what's going to happen is we're going to take probiotics and we're going to give ourselves an excess of bacteria or we're going to deplete ourselves further. And so this supplement it should be very linked with bioindividuality. I think that's something another huge topic to kind of dive into, but I think bioindividuality is huge in bodybuilding, huge, even just in general health, because what's going to work for some people is not going to work for me. And it might not necessarily work for you either. And so probiotics is one of those things is yes, maybe this person needs some of that good bacteria, but maybe this person has too much. And so honestly, I would argue that probiotics and some other certain supplements are actually one of the reasons why some bodybuilders actually have to take a step back from the stage and maybe even retire just because they have messed up their guts to the point where they can't handle the stress of a prep anymore.
And it is just so common for us to see with our clients digestive discomfort, dysbiosis. So we're seeing bloating, we're seeing heartburn, we're seeing constipation and diarrhea, which, by the way, those are two sides of the exact same coin. And it really is no surprise. Obviously, it comes down to the types of foods, the sort of frequency of meals. It could come down to volume, it could come down to low calorie, but oftentimes it really does boil down to this very, I'm going to say, irresponsible use of digestive supplements. Certain athletes taking certain digestive enzymes that actually don't work with their bodies, potentially because of certain infections that they have. So, I, for one, discovered this is a couple of years back that I had an H. pylori infection, something that I always thought was like a third world problem. That is not the case. It is so prevalent here. There are people who are walking around asymptomatic, but we're saying that generally about 80% of the population actually could test positive for an H. pylori infection. And because of that infection, a lot of the supplements that I thought were good for me were actually doing me a great deal of harm at the time. The other one that I see on a lot of protocols, and I've even seen it on my own protocols from some of my own coaches without having questioned me on the status of my reproductive health, of my hormonal health, is actually sort of hormone supporting compounds. And the issue that I take with this is that our hormonal health, especially as women, is so, I don't want to say fragile in a bad way, but the reality is that as women who, we're the ones who are going to be, carrying those babies for 9 months. Our bodies have to be in just the right space hormonally to be able to actually carry out that very beautiful responsibility well. And so it makes perfect sense to me that in times of stress, our hormones fluctuate, they respond very quickly. In ways that we want them to, and in ways that we don't. It's just a sensitive system, as it should be. And so when I see things like Vitex and Chaste Tree, which are supposed to be progesterone supportive, which help modulate estrogen and some of its androgenic impacts on the body. When I see things like DIM, which is supposed to support estrogen clearance, I really do take issue with it because, number one, not everybody needs to be clearing estrogen. Some people actually have lower estrogen. And if you're actually pushing additional clearance, well, you could be dropping estrogen down to dangerously low levels, and so therefore not getting the result that you want and exacerbating the problem. If you're taking things like Vitex and Chaste Tree when progesterone doesn't actually need the added support or the added push, again, you can end up dysregulating the other hormones that are impacted by progesterone levels. And so I understand and I fully appreciate the mindset of, okay, we need to make sure that our athletes are, in hormonal balance, or that we're supporting their hormones through this otherwise challenging time, because prep is. But I also do believe that doing it, the way that, it kind of feels blindfolded, right? It's like taking a shot in the dark, is actually super irresponsible. And it's the reason why so many athletes either, one, don't even make it to stage, two, have a very short time in the space, and three, actually end up walking away from the industry altogether. And so for me, when I'm looking at Fit Model, because that's the space that I'm going to be. Can you hear my dogs, by the way? Because they're like going crazy right now.
I can
Nope.
hear anything.
Perfect. Thank you, Zoom. Yeah, so I'm really stoked about the Fit Model division because to me, it is literally bringing me back to 2013 when I turned pro. At the end of my very first pro season, I discovered that I was pregnant with baby number four of five. I have 5 kids now. And I don't know if I mentioned that. Did I mention that? I might have. Anyhow, baby number 4, I discovered that I was pregnant at the end of my rookie pro season. And what a testament to, I'm not going to say how easy, but the potential to be able to maintain your reproductive health and your hormonal balance while being highly competitive. I started competing. It was, I think, like I want to say the end of 2009 was my first prep. 2010 was my first show. And I competed with loads of different federations at the time until I found home with the IFBB. And And so really, like I feel like I was in prep for like a solid 4 years. Like I never actually took a proper recovery season. And yet I never dealt with things like amenorrhea. I never dealt with things like digestive dysbiosis or discomfort. I didn't deal with, all of the sort of hormonal ups and downs that prep can bring. And like I said, I ended up getting pregnant at the end of my rookie season. It was actually a judge who had pulled me off to the side after that show and said to me, Simone, you look great, but it's like there's just something different about you. He goes, I don't think it's a tan, but you look a little green. And that was the weekend that I actually discovered that I was pregnant with Zev, who's now 10 years old. But like it's why I'm actually so stoked that this division is coming back. Because I think that whether, you are where you are in life, which is kind of just getting, potentially a family started, or someone like me who's in those perimenopausal years, hormonal health is so crucial. It needs to be prioritized. And so I think that this is a division that can really be relevant to everyone because you actually do have the ability to train hard, to get on stage, to celebrate your work, to be competitive, but not have to get so lean that certain systems in the body start to have to give up their reserve to
Yeah.
actually get you to show day. For me personally, at 45, with maybe more muscle density, a little more hardness, thinner skin, the addition of that little layer of body fat that we are going to be able to enjoy in Fit Model is actually what I think is going to help me be on stage looking a little more vital, a little bit more youthful. So certainly for not just, newer athletes who are just getting into the sport, but a lot of the older athletes, I think Fit Model is going to be phenomenal. So for me, Fit Model really is like the functional health division. And not to say that you can't be functionally minded in other divisions. I mean, I know that my coach, Paul Revelia of Pro Physique, he puts loads of highly competitive, very beautiful natural athletes on stage, one of which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But in Fit Model, there's definitely no excuse. I feel like you can have your cake and eat it too. Yes, actual
Yeah,
cake.
absolutely. No, I think Fit Model really sounds like the best of both worlds. I think it's going to be a really fantastic division, especially for if you are aware of your health and you want your hormones to be in a good spot. Like it's kind of like we talked about, where if your hormones aren't in a good spot, that's just another stress to the body. And when we're going into a prep and we're on stage, your body really needs to have the least amount of stress in order to, put up with a prep, because the prep is a huge stress
It is.
itself. And so, kind of back when we were talking about the hormonal supplements that we see lots of coaches not prescribing but giving, is I think without knowing exactly where your hormones are at or how they're metabolizing, I think it's very surprising to see people giving hormonal supplements. And I know it's with the best intent, but it's just that misconception. And with not, like I said, without knowing what our hormones are doing, and if in my case, when I thought my estrogen was really low, but it was actually really high, in the end, you really can just make things worse. So it is just so, so important to really think about that individuality. That's again why we really love our one lab test. It's called the Stress and Hormones Panel, and
Love
it
it.
completely tests your cortisol, which is your stress hormone, and then all of your hormones in depth. It's a fantastic test. But yeah, just for your body to go into a prep, you want it to be in such a good spot so it can handle the stress of a prep. And our hormones are really, really key to that.
Yeah, they are. They definitely are revealing. And so oftentimes we think that we're doing all of the right things, but more is not necessarily more when it comes to our health. And I think that's just why, when we put together our Transform program, we I mean we got a little bit greedy. We threw a lot of labs in there, but it's because we really just want our athletes to be able to take a very comprehensive look at their bodies in advance of prep and then coming out of prep as well. You definitely want to bookend with that data so that your off season is a true recovery season. Like it's back in the day, we really just called it an off season. And I remember when, the term recovery season or improvement season sort of came onto the map. I was really excited to hear that because it gave that that time and space a lot of purpose. And I think that's where, people like us, where coaches like us come in, is, we can actually take that improvement season and ensure that it's not just that, you're building more of that upper shelf, but that you're actually building a hormonal reserve to be able to number one, get the physical results that you want out of your improvement season, but then be able to get on stage the following year, looking your best. And part of it really comes down to also respect for the space. So I can admit to having over competed. I enjoyed the process of prep and getting on stage, just the sort of the presentation aspect, the celebratory aspect of it so much that I think I actually got on stage prematurely many times. And today, when I think back, I have to ask myself, like, was I respectful of the fact that the judges did actually provide constructive criticism? Did I tune in? Did I take the time to make those improvements? Did I come back better? Did I do my homework? And the reality is that I didn't. I actually got on stage a lot just because I enjoyed it so much, not necessarily always delivering a better package. And that's the whole thing, right? Is like you can go through an entire improvement season with the greatest workout, and you're reverse dieting, you're getting your calories back up, but you're actually not getting as much out of it as you would like to, or as the judges are asking you to, simply because your body just hasn't even had the time to replete, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think recovery and rest, it is almost it's a topic that when people think of recovery and their rest season, whatnot, I think they think like, oh, we'll do some active rest days, we're still
Mm,
training, we're still pushing things. And in a functional space, we really want the recovery season to look like an actual sufficient recovery.
yeah,
Without this sufficient recovery for your body, it's like you said, our hormones they cannot heal. Our gut cannot heal. Our body cannot heal from the stress of what we went through in prep. Um, and that's another thing leading back to with the labs is it's so great to see exactly what imbalance we have coming off of prep. Because I'm not gonna lie, when we come off of prep, we're most likely going to have some sort of imbalance just because of the stress that's on our body. And so when we come off of prep, it is so great to know exactly what's going on so we can truly heal in the recovery season and prime yourself and set yourself up for success in the next prep season.
that's exactly it. And that's what I'm saying, like that respect for the sport is really something to keep top of mind. I know we've talked about it, we're not going to call anybody out, but we've talked about certain athletes who, are coming out of a long prep season. And then instead of going into what would be a scientifically sound recovery season, they're actually just transitioning into a different sport altogether. It's like, oh, during my recovery season, I'm going to go into Hyrox because I want to get my stamina up. Or, I'm going to start training at Orange Theory F45 because, I want to be more functionally fit. And I get it. I love that everybody is multidisciplinary and multi-passioned in this sport. A lot of us are coming from athletic backgrounds before we even find the stage. So it makes perfect sense that you obviously don't ever want to drop the ball on your athleticism, but I don't know that it's necessarily conducive to actually recovering. And so when we're talking about recovery, we're not talking about like, okay, you're sleeping a little bit better and, you are maybe dialing down the intensity of your cardio. We're actually talking about like, where is your gut health? What is that balance between your, commensal and your bad bacteria? Or have we actually dealt with all of the infections? How depleting to your mineral status and your mineral ratios, because they do have to exist in very ideal ratios. What has been the impact of prep, and are we actually able to replete those ratios and that status so that you can better deal with your next prep? We're talking about things like your sex hormones, your thyroid hormones, your metabolic health. We're talking about also the oxidative stress, like what is the health of your cells? What are the different products that you were using over the course of prep? And I'm not talking about PEDs, but literally like, even certain creams that you were using to condition your skin. A lot of us are eating out of plastic and drinking out of plastic and cooking with, like Teflon. What was the impact to your DNA, your cellular health while you were doing all of those things? And so there's a lot that needs to be recovered. And that's why I love our functional labs so much, because they really give us the roadmap to do that work. Whereas when, I was looking at my own health and even my clients' health through the lens of only conventional labs, there were a couple of things that I was missing. Number one, we were looking at it as a diagnostic tool. So diagnostic meaning like, what do you have, right? What label can we apply to this sort of group of symptoms? What is the diagnosis? As opposed to with our functional labs, where we're actually looking at what is the reason that you're having these health symptoms? Why do you feel like this in your body, right? So why versus what? And we're also looking at different ranges, right? We're looking at, with functional labs, we're looking at a health conscious segment of the population. And we want to see our athletes, we want to see people in general showing up with markers that are within those healthy ranges, because we want to see things that are like subclinical. We don't want to actually see something that is, I guess, that requires putting out a fire. That's where we need to refer out. And so, for me, the functional labs are very revealing of what your true health status is and where there is actually work that can be done to bring up all of those metrics so that, at least for our clients, that you can actually get into prep feeling your best and actually getting the most out of it. We have an athlete who is going to be joining us hopefully in the next few weeks on the podcast. Her name is Brittany Shulman. She is an IFBB bikini pro. She is beautiful. She is successful. She is very relevant in the sport. She is an Olympia level athlete. She's also a mom, and she is actually taking about a year, is what we think right now, off of her competitive season to be able to recover a lot of these different systems in the body so that when she does get back on stage, she can make even more of an impact than she already has. How? I don't know. I mean, she's pretty phenomenal. But yeah, so Brittany Shulman is our first sponsored athlete with Balance and Body Diagnostics. And so she'll be here in a few weeks to talk about her experience. So I hope everybody will tune in for that so they can learn a little bit more about what this can look like for them and their coaches, and how it is you can so easily incorporate functional lab work, functional protocols, and how much more streamlined and predictable your actual prep season can be using systems like this.
Yeah, absolutely. We are so, so excited to welcome Brittany to Balance and Body Diagnostics. We're so excited to work with her, and she really truly aligns with us. We also think, like, I know that we would both argue that the most important time in the entire, between your prep, your recovery season, your off season, the most important time is your recovery season.
Yep.
And what we find is that athletes who come out of prep and they're supposed to be in their recovery season, and like you said, they go into other new competitive sports because they want to switch it up or, whatnot. Those athletes are actually the ones that will come out later with the most issues, the most hormonal issues, the most gut issues. And so what people really don't realize, and especially athletes, is I think recovery to them seems very counterproductive. They're thinking, well, I need to be growing. I need to be, getting bigger. I need to be eating. I need to be getting all my calories back. But recovery takes time. And I know that recovery seems it can seem counterproductive, but it is actually the best thing for your entire season. It is so, so important. And it's like I said, the athletes that we see that jump straight from their prep to another competitive sport are actually the ones who come out with the most imbalances and are most likely to have to pull out of sports altogether, just because they don't heal the underlying stress that their body has taken on, which is impacting their hormones, their digestion, their minerals, everything. So again, it is just so, so important to really take care of yourself in this recovery period.
Yep. And this isn't just us saying this. Like, if we actually take a look at some of our favorite athletes in competitive bodybuilding, they're doing exactly what we're talking about. So take a look at, for instance, Jen Dory. Jen Dory was really one of the first, I think, who was very open about the fact that she was going into proper recovery mode and that, a comp life balance mattered to her. She is married to our first ever Mr. Physique Olympia winner, Mark Anthony, and they really do this dance quite well. Like, they have a very thriving personal life. They're out, they're eating, they're traveling, they're doing all the things. And then when it's time to get back on stage, they dial it in, and she comes back as our two-time Miss Bikini Olympia champion. So, she competes at the Olympia. Obviously, she's got a lifetime qual because she is an Olympia winner. And so she's able to take essentially the entire year off from one Olympia to the next. And I think that's why when she gets back on stage, she looks so fresh, right? Like it's not just about her proportions and her poise, but she actually just looks so vibrant every single time she gets on stage. Her body looks rested. Her body looks like she's thriving, and she is because she's actually treating her recovery really functionally well, right? And I would say the same is true for Christopher Bumstead, right? Chris, you're not seeing him. I mean, we're not going to see him anymore on stage, but you don't see him jumping, into the New York Pro and the pit and like show after show after show because he's squeezing the entire year really to get the most out of it. And I know actually Christopher Bumstead worked with another functional health practitioner and actually with two that I know of, and they I think were integral in getting him back onto that stage for his fourth and fifth and sixth win. Look at Phoebe Hagen. Phoebe Hagen is one of the best known IFBB bikini pros. I mean, her socials are phenomenal. I love consuming her content. That's somebody who I would definitely want to speak to on this podcast eventually. So she is taking a very good amount of time off right now, and she's just doing other things and she's enjoying life. And on her podcast and her socials, I know she's definitely spoken about the fact that she's kind of like looking and feeling her absolute best. And that is a testament to looking at the stage as one piece of the puzzle and understanding that your prep has everything to do with the way that you're treating your psyche and all of the different systems in your body and not just the amount of reps and sets and calories that you have on your plan. So different people that I would actually love to speak to, but it is really cool to see that the industry seems to be heading in that direction, and the people who are really at that, sitting at that upper echelon are driving the point home that we can't just, kind of like white knuckle our way through our preps and our off seasons anymore. And that time spent off stage is actually time invested in longevity. And that's really it. That's what we're looking for, right? For our athletes, we want to provide them with longevity in their health and in their posing heels so that they can stay in the sport for as long as they want, make the absolute most out of it, whether that be, as competitive athletes, as business owners that, running businesses related to the sport. And so they can just like leave on their own terms. That's really all that I want for our athletes. And so, like I said, I'm going to be super excited to introduce Brittany to everybody and have her share with everybody what that looks like, what working with Balance and Body Diagnostics looks like. So on that note, we are going to be back week after week. We're dropping our pods on Mondays. Is that what we've agreed to?
Yep, Mondays.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So we're going to be dropping pods on Mondays. And next week, we're going to start to unpack specifically some of our favorite labs. Now, we've got a catalog of, literally hundreds of labs that we could actually use for our clients. And we always ensure that we are selecting those that are relevant to our client's health experience. But we're going to be unpacking some of our absolute favorites and the specific markers on those labs that are just the most revealing and that give us, I guess, the clearest insight into our clients' body's needs. So you'll be able to hear more about that next week. And in the meantime, if they want to connect with us, they can do that over at balanceandbodydiagnostics.ca. We're up in Canada, although we do work with clients globally, or on Instagram at Balance and Body Diagnostics, right?
Yep, exactly. Well, thank you so much for listening, and we are so excited to work individually with you and also have you on our podcast.
Okay, we'll see you all soon. Bye.
Bye.